If you believe in what you're doing, other people will believe in what you're doing. It's not about how many shows you've done. It's about, can somebody connect to your vision? Can they connect to your heart? Do they believe in what you're doing?
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
And we're back with another episode of The Pop, the podcast on podcasting. Did you know that's what it meant, Dana?
I figured that's what it meant.
Good. I hope so. Well, thanks for tuning in again. We have Dana Shea on today, and she is the host of the Real Relationship Talk podcast. So helping other people in their marriage. She's actually a relationship coach herself. And Dana, let's go here. Just a very short, easy answer. All I'm really looking for is when you started your podcast.
August of 2020.
Okay, I'm looking back, August of 2020. So it was a little bit after COVID. Was it like you always wanted to have a podcast, but then you said, well, I've got all this free time on my hand. Maybe I'll go ahead and start a podcast? Or was it not COVID related?
You know, Adam, I've always wanted to have a talk show. I thought it would be like a televised talk show. And I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia, so I'm not near some huge major studio. And so just realistically, I was trying to figure out how to make that happen. And I've heard about podcasting. I love podcasting. I'm a podcast junkie. And so the more podcasts that I listened to, I thought, I need to do this. I want to do this. And so I didn't do like the way that you're supposed to launch a podcast. You're supposed to actually have a plan, let your people know 6 weeks in advance. I literally decided on like a Friday, I'm going to start a podcast. And then on Saturday, I recorded my first episode. So don't do that. That's not the greatest advice.
Got a few questions out of just what you said right there. First off, you said you didn't start the way that you're supposed to. And so if you could just give us the recipe that you heard people are supposed to use when they launch a podcast. And then maybe we could talk a little bit more later about like yours specifically, what you did in your pre-launch. You said, I didn't do 6 weeks, but what's kind of like this plan that you've heard in the past?
Well, I've heard that you, first of all, need to really drill down on your avatar. So you need to know who your demographic is, and you need to be able to name this person, and you need to be able to feel this person's pain. And you need to be so in touch with your avatar that when you do a podcast, that person is who you are broadcasting to. Didn't do that. And then I also heard that, of course, you're supposed to have several episodes in the bank. So you should have, I've heard anywhere from 6 to 35 episodes just stored so that you can constantly produce content. We see a lot of like podcast ghosting that happens where people will launch a show and then you don't hear from them for like 6 weeks. And you're like, what? That's kind of hard, especially for a new podcast to follow. And so I didn't have anything in the bank. Like I said, I literally made the decision on Friday and did the first episode on Saturday. So I feel like all of the traditional rules, all the equipment, I was literally getting equipment in as I was recording the show. My husband would be like, hey, Amazon just delivered something. And I hit pause and I ran downstairs to see what it was. I mean, it was so janky. Like, I don't recommend anybody start the way that I started.
Okay, well, let me ask you on that. Okay, first question. You mentioned 6 weeks to let your potential listener know, your friends know that you're about to launch a podcast. I call it a pre-launch process. Why would that be important?
I think because, first of all, people's attention spans are so short. And so if you just launch, let's say you put a post out there on social media on a Wednesday. Hey guys, I'm going to start my podcast next week. First of all, just the way the social media algorithms work, all of your people are not going to see that post. And so the wisdom in taking 6 weeks and a pre-launch is so that more people can see, so that you're starting to drum up some excitement, so that people are starting to prepare for this big launch. And then I think it also gives you time to get the guests that you want, if you have an interview-based show, to be able to get those people scheduled. I was doing all of this on the fly. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, I've got to release this episode. I release on Tuesdays. And there were many days, many weeks where it'd be Sunday hence me dragging my husband on the show. I'd be like, hey, you are always going to be my backup person, right? And so that's why I believe the wisdom is to give yourself a good 6-week buffer, not only to build excitement, but to also help you to be able to prepare.
That is so smart and so true. This avatar, you mentioned that getting a full understanding of who that perfect person is. You mentioned even going as far as giving him or her a name. And on the podcast mentioned before, you need a photograph of your avatar. You take like that perfect client for your relationship business, for your, I have a podcasting business, for your real estate business, or whatever it is that your company is. And I say, figure out like that perfect person that you do the most amount of business with. You're not going to be sexist if it's a man or if it's a woman or any other gender, right? You're just picking a person that you have in mind that you've worked with. And you put that photograph on your computer screen or put it right behind your webcam so you can really think about that person every time you ask a question. What did you end up doing, and do you think it cost you?
I don't think it cost me because while I didn't have my avatar nailed down for the podcast, I've been doing this a long time in other media venues, outlets, if you will. I had a blog for a long time that I used to write for. I'm also a pastor at my church. And so the people that I get to minister to and work with, I've been working with those folks for a long time. So it's almost the same person. And so even though, like I said, I didn't have that necessarily drilled down, once I did take the time to say, okay, who is my avatar? It was the same person that I had been helping all of these years. And so my avatar, her name is Vivian. She's 38, married, 3 kids. Like I can tell you exactly who she is today. But when I launched the podcast, I don't know that I would have explained to you in great detail like I can do today.
And then the third takeaway that I got from you was discussing having a number of episodes, quote, in the bank. I always liken it to, it's like finances. Most of us would be afraid if we were having to live paycheck to paycheck. Many of us are living paycheck to paycheck, but it's stressful. It's stressful to be like, I really want to go out to dinner with my family, but I got to wait till Friday. I got to get that paycheck. Or I've been saving up for a new suit, but I got to wait for that paycheck. Or, man, I've got to be a little behind on my rent or my mortgage this month only because we don't get paid until Friday, for example. And the thought is, it is a recipe for stress, for holding a lot of weight on our shoulders. And if we can put a bit of money in the bank financially, it makes us feel a lot better. And you mentioned the exact same terminology. A lot of people call it episodes in the can, but you said episodes in the bank. And I really think that way as well, that it's important not to live paycheck to paycheck or episode to episode. You said you had an episode coming out on a Tuesday and you were like, your husband's name's Shaun. Shaun, we got to jump on. It's Sunday. We just got home from church. I'm sorry to do this, but it's time for us to record an episode because I got to edit that thing and publish it by Tuesday. What is the number that you focus on now? Like you said, you didn't do that. You knew that you wanted to do it on Friday, started recording on a Saturday, and then things started coming in from Amazon. But the big question is, for the listener, and because you've pretty much not done it the way that they tell you you need to, what have you learned? How many episodes should we have in the can?
To decrease my anxiety and to keep me from having a panic attack, I feel comfortable with about 3 episodes in the bank. And I was on an app, Clubhouse. Many people are familiar with Clubhouse. I love Clubhouse. I'm in a group called Club Pod, and they have all this great podcasting info. But there was a speaker in that room who said the opposite of having these episodes in the bank. And this was the first time I'd ever heard anyone explain it this way. But the way that he explained it is when you first start a podcast, you're going to be really bad. And people just need to understand that. Like, that's the gospel truth. We are bad with everything that we start. When you first ride a bike, you're going to fall off your bike several times. When you launch a new business, you don't know everything there is to know about business. When you first get married, you're going to make tons of mistakes in your new marriage. And when you start a podcast, these are not going to be your greatest episodes in the beginning. And so his advice was, instead of having 15 to 20 really bad episodes, because you're not really growing at that point. Most people, they'll have like a day where they'll fire off a few episodes. And maybe they'll have 4 or 5 different episodes that they do in one day. Well, if you think about that, if you've got 20 of those kinds of episodes, they're not really showing your growth. And so I appreciated that, because I had put so much pressure on myself, like, oh, I need to have like all of these episodes ready. And so now, like I said, for me to have about 3 episodes, one, my podcast is done in series. And so like I did a all about sex series for the married folks. Then now I'm doing a single AF series. And so I can't have 15 episodes because I'm probably not even going to be in that same series. And what it also reminded me of is earlier on, I did an episode with a guy. I was desperate for guests in the beginning, like every new podcaster is. And so I had this guy come on, and it was just not a great episode. And I really couldn't use it. And I felt so bad because he had given his time, and I really appreciated what he had given as far as in his time. But it didn't fit. It didn't fit my avatar. I didn't have that, though, in the beginning. And so once I kind of got a little bit further down the road, and I thought, I'm just not going to be able to use this. And so for me personally, I feel good if I can have about 3. I would say for me, probably no more than 4 episodes in the bank is necessary for me.
And is that with you publishing once a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week? How frequent are they?
So I have a weekly show. I publish every Tuesday.
All right. Every Tuesday, weekly. And so about 3 weeks of episode is where you'd like to be.
That's right.
Right. Quick thought. During like Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, some people try to take a few weeks off because they're going to be either traveling or with family or whatever the case may be. For you, what is your plan for like this upcoming Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's area? Is that something where you're like, I'm just going to keep recording throughout it? Or is it like that one time I'm going to record 6 ahead so that I can take that off? Or is it the third option maybe is I'm not even going to worry about publishing. I'm going to take it off and I'm not going to publish episodes. What are your thoughts there?
Definitely not option C. I do believe I'm a huge believer in consistency. And so if I took 6 weeks off, I feel like my podcast would die. So I'm not going to take off. Now, 2020, the holidays of 2020, I just kept recording straight through. So I had a few episodes in the bank, and that gave me a little bit of buffer so that I'm not missing Christmas dinner. I'm up here recording a show. So my preferred method, it would probably be to just continue to work through, but then to have those few episodes to kind of lean back or be able to fall back on, I should say, in case I do want to take 2 weeks off with my family.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Out of curiosity with your business, so you mentioned one of your series, because you kind of do your podcast in like almost like a season, or these are the 5 or 6 or 7 episodes that are all around this one topic. For example, you mentioned one was single AF, and you mentioned another one was something about sex, your relationship.
About sex. Right.
Yeah, and then I was looking back, and I think I saw another series as well. I'm trying to see if I can see it again.
It was the relationship mistakes series.
Yeah, the mistakes. That's right. Perfect. And with these series, how do you know like what you're going to do for a series? How do you know how long the series should be? I know this is a huge question, but also thinking, do I bring Dana Shea on my podcast and I do a series I record 3 different questions for her. And one of the questions goes on this series, a different one goes on this other series, and the last one goes on some other type of podcasting series. What does it look like as you're thinking about it and recording it?
Yeah, I'm very intuitive. And so I think a part of it is just, what do I feel? I'm always thinking about my avatar. So I'm always thinking about what am I hearing as a coach in my sessions that is kind of this common thread that keeps coming up? And so, for example, the Single AF series, I kept hearing from single people, even in the church, who would be like, nobody is paying attention to us. We need advice. We need to know how to navigate through these waters. And I got married at 18. I really wasn't single for long. I mean, I went from a college dorm to my husband's house. And so I really didn't have a lot of experience. And so for a long time, I'm probably not the best person to speak into this. But lo, I have an interview based podcast, right? So I'm like, why don't I bring some amazing people to the podcast who do have experience being single, who have lived this in their personal lives, and who could speak to this? So that's kind of how I develop what I'm going to talk about next. And so, like right now, there's this big conversations that are around me about like addiction, all kinds of addiction. And so I realized that in marriage, that's a very tricky thing to be able to navigate through is when you have a spouse who's dealing with an addiction, whether it be a drug addiction, some sort of even food addiction, a sex addiction, gambling addiction, whatever the addiction is. A lot of times there's not a lot of resources or help, and there's a lot of shame that's based around that. So I've been talking to some different psychotherapists about what does this look like? I'm not a psychotherapist. So what does this look like in a marriage? And so these conversations, if they begin to develop traction, that's kind of one of the ways that I'm like, okay, this is worthy of a series and not just a standalone episode.
Another thing, Dana, by the way, that I loved what you just said. That was really, really powerful. I think there's a lot of wisdom there. With you having your business, you do relationship counseling. No, excuse me, relationship coaching. I guess it's similar to counseling, but you have to have some type of degree for the counseling. And with coaching, you can get like certifications, but you don't have to. Is that right?
That's correct.
What I'm wondering is, like, do you have a job also, and then you're doing this on the side, or how does that look for you?
Yes, so I'm a full-time pastor at my church, so that's my main gig, but a big part of my job is pastoral care. And so this is where I've always had this passion to help marriages, even from the time, I mean, I was a very, very young married person. And because of the trauma and craziness that my husband and I had experienced in our marriage, we would reach out to different people and we've done the counseling thing. And it wasn't ever really what we were looking for. And so I said, you know what? I want to become what I was looking for. I want to be a mentor. I didn't have the verbiage coach really didn't exist in my mind back then, but I just wanted to be the very thing that I was looking for. So during the day, and my job is great. They're very flexible with me. And so I devote most of my time to my job as a pastor. And then I have real relationship talk that I'm also devoting quite a bit of time to. Coaching takes a lot of time. And then, of course, podcasting. I'm a one-woman show at this point. And so it's me producing, me editing, me finding guests. I do have a podcast manager who's come alongside me. And so she's helping to find guests and then also get me booked on other podcasts as well. So that's been a little bit of a burden that's lifted. But yeah, there's the time management piece is really, really big. And it's something, honestly, I'm not necessarily the greatest at because I'm a very focused person. So whatever I'm working on has my complete undivided attention. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I have to go to work tomorrow. I can't stay up till 2 a.m. editing this show.
Yeah. Well, how does your podcast build your business? Is it the relationships? Is it that listeners are hiring you? Maybe perhaps it hasn't actually influenced the business yet, but you intend to have it doing that. So if and when and how does the podcast fill into this business of doing mentorship or coaching the way that you've always envisioned that you think somebody should?
Yeah, that's a great question, Adam. I'm really excited to talk about this because I had in my mind, okay, at some point I'm going to monetize this podcast. I didn't really know what that was going to look like because I didn't get into podcasting for the money. This was not going to be another stream of income for my business. It was just something that I'm passionate about, that I felt like I can give a lot of value on the free side. However, I will say that there was an episode, I want to say it's like episode 12 or 13, pretty early on, that my husband and I did this whole episode about forgiveness. And that is still to this day one of my highest rated shows. And so I got a coaching, I call them discovery calls, where people will reach out to me online and say, hey, I want to set up an appointment with you. And so I'm always asking you, how did you find out about me? And she said, I was listening to that podcast that you did on forgiveness. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you listen to my podcast? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, well, how did you find the podcast? She's like, oh, it came up. I put something in Google and it was on the first page. So now I'm thinking SEO, right? Like what an amazing opportunity. And I know a good deal about SEO. I was an internet marketer years ago. And so I brought all that into this. But I have seen many since her, they come in through the podcast. And so the way that I monetize the podcast now is offering services. So I do a bi-monthly workshop. I'll do a marriage workshop, and then I'll do a women's only workshop. And so I'm always advertising for that on the podcast. And so it's almost like a cycle. Either people will learn about the podcast through the workshops, or they're learning about the workshops through the podcast.
Oh,
But
cool.
yeah, most of my coaching clients are finding me either through word of mouth or through the podcast. It's been really, really great in that regard.
Will you clarify if bi-monthly means every 2 months or twice per month?
I'm sorry. Yeah, every 2 months.
Every other month. Got it. Got it. So with these bi-monthly, every other month workshops, where do you advertise them? Are you doing Facebook ads? Are you telling friends, organic Facebook, social media? Is it paid ads, or is it just like on your podcast? You're just mentioning, hey, it's coming up, and then you give them a date. How do you exactly advertise when these are coming up?
A lot of it is word of mouth. And so I've developed tons of relationships just over the years. And so I will put it out there, and then people will also share, hey, Dana's going to be doing this workshop on this particular topic. So a lot of it is word of mouth. And then, of course, on the podcast, I will do some social media advertising. I tried running Facebook and Instagram ads on a couple of the episodes, and it wasn't very successful. And so I haven't done those in a while just because I really didn't see results. Where I saw the most bang for my buck is in those conversations and that word of mouth. And it does take more time and effort, but first of all, it's something about, because I do the workshops on Zoom, and I have this thing where I like to see everybody on one page. I don't want page 2 and 3 hanging out there and I can't see their faces. And so the workshops are intimate. We break down into discussion groups. And so I don't want it to be so big that I'm not really interacting with everyone. So right now, with them being 25 people or so, I can do a lot of the word of mouth stuff myself. Now, if it grows to the point where there's 100 people in a workshop, then I'm probably going to have to start doing some other things.
I'm switching gears here a little. What was the absolute biggest challenge that you've ever faced but overcome with the podcast? And the second part of the question is, what is the biggest challenge that you are still working to overcome on podcasting?
The biggest challenge that I have had to overcome, I think, honestly, it's a lot of the techie stuff. I'm not technologically inclined naturally. And so there's a gazillion microphones that you can buy. And I am also a perfectionist. Okay. So I would be on Amazon for hours trying to find the perfect microphone. And then I would come across somebody's blog that's like, don't buy the most expensive thing right now. You're just starting. And so that's been a bit for me to work out. When I hear like anything in the episode that sounds off, like anything in the audio, it bothers the mess out of me. And so those things where, again, some people will be like, don't worry about it. Nobody cares about those little things. It will bother me. And so I wasted a lot of time trying to make it perfect in the beginning, trying to make it just right in the beginning. And I know that I'm going to listen to these episodes in a year or two and probably cringe because it'll be that much better. But I feel like I'm still going to do the best that I can do now. I still want to be able to produce what my A+ is today. I still want to be able to do that. And so that's probably been the biggest challenge that I've overcome. What I'm overcoming now, honestly, I think is just limiting beliefs. I have some dream guests that I would love to have on the show. And in the beginning, I was like, there's no way I'm going to reach out to them. They're going to ignore me. I didn't even think they were going to like say no. They're just going to totally ignore me. I'm this small little podcast that just got started. But I ended up asking two people. So one was an old mentor. He didn't even know who I was. He's in the relationship space. I had been following him online for years. His advice really, really touched my marriage. And so I would tell everybody about him. I would tell everybody, you need to buy his book. I mean, I'm totally free marketing for this guy. And so just because he meant so much to me, I wanted him to be able to come on the show. And he was one of those people that I thought there's no way he's going to say yes. And he said yes. And I about fell out on the floor. I was like, are you sure? Are you sure you want to come on my show? And so that was one. And then another couple, same, I had been listening to their podcast for a couple years. They're like in episode 500 now. And I thought, they don't even have an interview-based show. And I thought, I don't even know if they go on other people's shows, but I'm going to kind of reach out and ask. And so even though I've kind of overcome that somewhat, there's still guests that I will find myself being like, nah, no, I'm not going to ask. No, they're going to say no. They're going to say no. Even though in my mind, I know that people with very, very large followings often say yes, but it's just a limiting belief that I have to get out of my own head thinking that they're not going to say yes.
So pretend I'm a listener of this podcast, the podcast on podcasting, and which basically means that I either already have a podcast or I'm about to start one. I've been wanting one for a long time. I want to do it, but something that holds me back or has held me back or has slowed me down is getting guests on the show. You mentioned that if they're famous, a lot of times they say yes, because how else did they get famous? They get in front of people. That's what they're looking for. That's what they want to do. What would you say to me? Like, I'm brand new or about to be brand new, and you don't think I should have the same limiting belief that we all tend to have. How do you help me get over it?
I would say to you, Adam, if you believe in what you're doing, other people will believe in what you're doing. It's not about how many shows you've done. It's not about how big your podcast is. It's about, can somebody connect to your vision? Can they connect to your heart? Do they believe in what you're doing? And so if you can sell that, then you'll be fine. And so ask big. You're always going to have people that are going to say no, but 100% of the people who you never ask will say no because they don't know you. You haven't even given them the opportunity. And that's the same advice that I'm telling myself. I reached out to a really really famous person. But I'm also the girl who thought Mariah Carey was going to come sing at my wedding, at my little church wedding of 100 people. But back then it was fan clubs, and I was in Mariah Carey's fan club. And I sent her little fan club a message, never heard back, but that's okay. And so I would just tell you the same. I would tell the listener the same thing that I'm telling myself, is that you will miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. So shoot your shot and see what happens.
Love it. We could drop the mic. That was good. I like that a lot. What's kind of, out of all the benefits that you've gotten from your podcast, what is the benefit that you're most grateful for?
The benefit that I am most grateful for is when listeners write in and say, I was going through XYZ problem and your show on this helped me. Like, that means more to me than anything. That's why I do what I do. And if it's just one person, if like the girl who was really struggling with forgiveness, this is something that she had been dealing with for years. She had been in therapy and it wasn't helping her, I guess, or maybe she wasn't advancing as far as she could. But she listened to one episode that I did on forgiveness and had a mindset shift. Like, that's just incredible. Such a gift.
Yeah. You feel like you're called to do it. I have another question, Dana Shea. This might be my last question for you today. It's along the same lines of the benefits that we have as podcasters. There's a lot that we can get from having a podcast. The value that you gain by knowing that you're touching other people's lives is huge. Is there a value or a benefit that literally surprised you? You're like, this is such a cool thing about having a podcast, and I never knew that I would get that. Is there something that you could share on along those lines?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I was surprised, kind of going back to what I said about how the podcast would grow my business. I was not expecting that. I was expecting them to almost be two different entities altogether. That I would do relationship coaching over here, and then I would have a podcast, and I would try to like convince these folks to go listen to an episode or two. And so the fact that this podcast is almost feeding the business has been such a blessing. It's been a complete shock. And so I want to hold that loosely because I don't want to ever get into the mindset of now I'm treating the podcast like a funnel, but I'm only thinking about it bringing business into, my relationship coaching. So I do want to kind of hold that loosely, but it is a blessing and it's been a great benefit. That's definitely surprised me.
That's good stuff. And again, the podcast is called, and I had it pulled up. I was actually listening to it a second ago. Real relationship talk, right? Real
Right.
relationship talk.
That's right.
If we have a listener who's perfect to jump on over to your show, call that person out. Who's your Victoria, I think you said, is your avatar. Tell us a little bit about if you're struggling with XYZ, you might want to come and check out my podcast over here.
Yeah, so my podcast is primarily for married couples, but like I said, we also are doing this whole single series right now. So the podcast is geared toward people who are struggling in their relationships, good people who are successful in many other areas of their lives, but they can't seem to get the relationship thing right. It's for people who have difficulty communicating. And I talk to people all the time and they're like, we don't communicate. I'm like, impossible. Everybody communicates. You just don't do it well. And there's some very easy things that if you just make a quarter turn, that you can grow and your relationships can be transformed. So I'm primarily talking to people who want to stay in their relationships. I'm not trying to help people get divorced, but people who are struggling, who just need some help, who need a coach. It's interesting because both my husband and I were actual coaches. He coached football for a season, and then I coached cheerleading. I cheered all my life. And a lot of those principles that you learn in coaching athletes, you bring into podcast, or I bring into my relationship coaching business and podcast, really. And I'm teaching people how to go further than they think they can go. I'm teaching people you can do it even though you don't believe that you can. I'm teaching them about limiting beliefs. I'm teaching them, though, from my own well, because I've been through all of this stuff and I'm still in process. And so a lot of the things that I've learned and experienced, we bring all of that into our coaching. And so I would just say for someone who really wants their marriage to succeed, maybe you've tried counseling and it really hasn't worked for you. That's one of the biggest differences. People always ask me, what's the difference between counseling and coaching? And a lot of times counseling, and I've done both and I'm all for it. But I think the difference between the two is as a counselor, mostly they're going into someone's backstory. They're dealing with childhood trauma, things of your past. They're going to spend a lot of time there. As a coach, we might touch on that for a hot second, but we're talking about your future. Where do you want to go? What are your goals? What do you envision your relationship to look like? Do you have a vision for your marriage? Like that question, people are like, what? I had no idea. I'm like, you have a vision for your business, right? You have a business plan, but you don't have a plan for your marriage. You think it's just going to happen automatically. So let's come up with a plan. And that's what I love to do.
Love, love, love it. So if you learned something from Dana Shea, hopefully it at least helped you grow as a podcaster and get to that next level and overcome some fears about getting the right guests, understanding what it takes to think about doing a series or a season, talking about she does a lot of interview based, or it might be Sunday night and she'll grab her husband, Shaun. And it was maybe a couple of other takeaways that you can have there as well is just thinking about, all right, should I start by understanding and identifying that avatar? Should I start by having some episodes in the bank? If I should have some in the bank, should it be just one? Should it be 6? Should it be 25 or 35? And I think Dana Shea argues 35 would be just way too many. Go ahead and get started maybe 3 weeks ahead. And that's actually something that we do with our clients. When a brand new client starts a podcast, we always have them get 2 full weeks of episodes. So that's their trailer episode, and then 3 on day 1, and then just 2 more, 1 for 1 week and 1 for the next week if they're doing a 1 a week show. And so a lot of different things that I think you could have come away from in this episode. And also, if you want to go over to Real Relationship Talk, you can find that wherever you're listening to this episode. You just can type that into Apple or Stitcher or whatever and jump over there. And if you do listen in, give her an honest written rating and review. Just let her know what you think of the podcast. And so I know, Dana, you read all of those, don't you?
I absolutely do. Everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. And how about this? I want you to share the last thing that could be on your mind for a newer podcaster, less than 2 years going, what they should do, can do, or ought to do, or think of when they're trying to expand their podcast.
I would say just keep going. One of the things, again, speaking of limiting beliefs, so many people think, oh, podcasts are oversaturated. Everybody has a podcast. There's a million, I think 800,000 podcasts or something like that now. And so I would say just keep going. Don't give up. It's interesting when I look through Apple Podcasts and I'll find a really great podcast and their last episode was like 2019. They gave up. They stopped for whatever reason. And so you're going to have these struggles. You're going to go through seasons where you're like, this isn't for me. This is too much work, but keep pushing through. And you're going to eventually get on the other side where you'll have 300 and 400 different episodes. And the thing I love about podcasting is that it's evergreen. And so people will feed off of your earlier podcasts and people will be able to watch you grow. And people love that. None of us are looking for perfection. We're looking to see honest, transparent, vulnerable people who are willing to step out there. And yeah, it's going to be janky in the beginning, but if you just keep working it, it's going to be awesome. So just keep going.
Love it. Love it. Thank you. The link to your podcast is also down in the show notes. Is there a website that we should put there as well? Dana Shea?
Yeah, they can either go to danashea.com, which is very problematic. People are like, how do I spell that? So I just send them to realrelationshiptalk.com. You'll be able to find out about my coaching, who I am as a person. And of course, you'll be able to find the podcast from there as well.
danashea.com will be in the show notes. And so I can't even say it now. Real Relationship Talk.
Yeah.
That'll be down in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for jumping in, adding value to me and to our listener as well. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, Adam. It's great being here.
All right. Until next time, my friends, make sure that you go out and start your podcast, launch your podcast, grow your influence, and grow your business through this remarkable thing. I know you'll be glad you did. And we're out. This episode's brought to you by growyourshow.com. Grow Your Show lets you be the star of your show while we handle all the hard stuff. We offer reliable and affordable post-production services that allow you to grow your show organically without all the work. So go ahead and check out the website right now and feel free to schedule a call with me and let's take your show to the next level. Again, growyourshow.com. You just press record. We handle the rest.